All right, here's more reading trends that started in 2025 and leading into something that I'm looking forward to in 2026. The first section, I guess you could say based around trees. All these I read pretty much as I'm presenting them to you, but not necessarily exactly in this chronological order. So the first one we'll talk about is The Golden Spruce by John Valiant. Wild story about, well, it gives a lot of great background about logging in the Pacific Northwest specifically. And then it talks about this 1 in a billion Sitka spruce in the Queen Charlotte Islands, which is pretty much at the very tip of the Alaskan Panhandle, where it meets British Columbia. But Queen Charlotte Islands is offshore. But anyhow, genetic mutant, 1 in a billion, revered by the Haida people of the island, to where when it got cut down, they had a funeral for it, and it was almost 200 feet tall, and it would take a Sitka spruce probably, I think they said 300-400 years to grow that long. So it's been a part of their culture, a revered member of their culture for centuries. Anyhow, a crazy story about a former high-level logger who had a change of heart, went total conservationist, and like a lot of converts, kind of went off the deep end, and somehow in his mind, to save this tree, he had to cut it down. To kind of get behind his logic behind that, I suggest you read The Golden Spruce by John Valiant. So while we're on trees, this is a great one, The Wild Trees by Richard Preston, who happens to be the brother of Douglas Preston. We talked about this book, but this is about the ecosphere found in the canopy of the Pacific redwoods. So all the oldest, biggest trees, it's a whole different world up there. It catches the fog and all sorts of particles. So there's actually like soil being built hundreds of feet up in the air. Fascinating story. And the hands-on that Richard got to learning about arborists, rope techniques, and how they can. It's some pretty amazing stuff. Swinging from tree to tree, some Tarzan stuff, but at the same time, it's pretty safe. It made me want to try it, but of course, probably not a good idea. But so that's sort of a happy story about trees. And then, while we've been mentioning tree conservation, ironically, the big burn is about the beginning of the Forestry Service and land conservation. Teddy Roosevelt and the nation's first forester, Gifford Pinchot. It talks about the event as like a out of control drought-induced wildfire across Washington, Idaho, and Montana. They recruited something like 10,000 volunteers from everywhere to come fight this. And prior to this event, I want to say 1906, 1907, the forest rangers really didn't get much respect, and actually the whole idea of conservation was under pressure from the robber barons, anyhow, the bigwigs who ended up owning almost everything, and they wanted to exploit the forests for money as opposed to conserving it for the entire nation. So That's a great story. And this is the first of 3 Timothy Egan books that we're going to mention. So on the fire angle, Norman Maclean, you'll probably recognize the name from A River Runs Through It, a cool novel that they made a book out of, or that they made a movie out of with Brad Pitt. So Young Men in Fire, it's the last book he wrote. It may have even been edited posthumously. He was like 85 or something when he was hiking the, going over the actual ground where this tragedy happened. This was smoke jumpers, and I think 1949, some of the first smoke jumpers, but went into this gulch, couldn't see how bad the fire was until they were too far down, and then with the wind, the fire outraced the men to safety. And it happened to be the first instance of like a self-rescue fire. I forget exactly what they called it, but the foreman saw what was happening and knew he couldn't run to the top of the gulch and to escape. So he stopped, set a small fire around himself, like a 20-foot perimeter, laid down with a wet his handkerchief over his mouth, and the fire passed over him. He got singed but survived, and he was like only one of 2 or 3 people who did survive out of it was almost 20 people. So great story, stirring, and you know, my wife says I got to have some tragedy. So getting to this this next section is kind of roundabout. So this first book kind of it kind of got led into by the jungle reading, because Fordlandia is this area that Henry Ford bought in the Brazilian Amazon that's twice the size of Delaware, and his idea was to clear a bunch of land and basically transport a little slice of America into this virgin territory. As you can imagine, it worked poorly because none of the American agriculture worked in the tropical rainforest. Totally different environment, and so it didn't work. Hubris in action, but fascinating. You know, anything to read about Henry Ford is pretty interesting. So Greg Grandin's Fordlandia. It's interesting on a lot of different angles, it's like most of my books. But while somewhere around this time, I had seen this book show up, and it also involves Henry Ford. It talks about the development of tractors. There's a lot of resistance at first because you know, people had been plowing with horses for centuries, and they didn't trust it. And when they were more inefficient and broke down all the time and couldn't actually do more work than the horses, they didn't have a lot to commend them. But this kind of shows the growth of them, sort of the different brands that were competing for superiority in different approaches. And you know, Henry Ford didn't start with tractors, but he jumped in and made a big difference with his mass production acumen. This is Tractor Wars, written by Neil Dahlstrom. He's a historian for John Deere, so this is a little biased, but still very, very fair, informational, and way more entertaining than I would have imagined. But I'm sort of a nerd for this kind of stuff. Growing up in the Ozarks, we used to go to Steam, all sorts of weird old-timey shit, but steam tractors, I remember. So that was pretty wild. Anyhow, as we were talking about with hubris, one downside of being able to the new technology and being able to plow places that you couldn't access before, is basically with the government's encouragement, they plowed up a lot of the Great Plains that had been for centuries this very delicately balanced ecosystem that was designed to withstand droughts and winds, and as long as you left that prairie grass with the 10 feet of roots, alone, it would provide for the bison and the Native Americans. But once you plow it up, it's going to be blown away within 3-4 years. And our second Timothy Egan book, The Worst Hard Time, describes the lead up to the Dust Bowl in mainly around Oklahoma, Kansas, Oklahoma area, some of Colorado, Texas, and how the people survived in that environment. And pretty interesting, tragic but interesting. So that'll give you kind of an idea of what I was looking at. And so what that has led to in 2026, Cadillac Desert by Mark Reasoner. This edition is from 2017. It's revised. So this is more of a modern appraisal of where the American West is standing as far as water resources and kind of the modern Dust Bowl. Hopefully not, but probably so in the making. But I guess this topic would be Great Plains. Our third Timothy Egan book, the great title, Short Nights of the Shadowcatcher. And so this is about this gentleman, Edward Curtis. If you ever get a chance to see any of the portraits he did, I would consider him like a East Coast gentleman, artist, a bohemian. I guess we'd call him a hipster now, but he got fascinated with the Plains Indians and the Northwest Coast Indians, and really took some beautiful portraits, both like village life shots as well as like portraits. Beautiful artwork, beautiful photography. Again, anything from Edward Curtis, and I like Timothy Egan. I love this guy, so I look forward to reading that. I know it's going to be a great read. And so the Edward Curtis was very sympathetic to the Native Americans, and another sympathetic take would be Dee Brown's "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee," just describing how the mistreatment of the Native Americans by the white settlers, and just the shitty deal that happened there. So I've had this in my possession for a while, but haven't read it. I know it's a total classic. Before I run out of time, we were talking about hubris. So Evan McConnell's Son of the Morning Star, Custer at the Little Bighorn, probably the poster child for hubris, especially of the American white male variety. So, everyone loves to see someone, the fall of someone great. Anyhow, all that's what I read in 2025 that is steering me into those last few books in 2026. I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to telling you all about it. So if you feel like reading any of those with me, let me know. And until then, keep reading.